Hey monkeys, it's Jim from Small Time Outlaws bringing you the 9th video in this advanced programming in Monkey tutorial series. In this video we're going to be continuing our adventure into reflection in Monkey, and we will be covering how to interpret the class info object as well as how to create new instances of the objects using the reflection functions. Alright, so let's get started. Open up Monk. And as we've done in the past couple videos, we're going to create two new files, and one's going to be our main file and one is going to be a module. So I can show you quickly how to deal with multiple modules with reflection. So in this first one, I'm going to go ahead and save it as, and this is going to be our module. So I'm going to go find our test module folder. You can put whatever folder you want. Just remember the name of it, and I'm going to call this, we're going to create a player class for our fake game, and I'm just going to create some player class with some random fields. All we're going to be doing is just going through this class and outputting what's in it pretty much. So I'm just going to create some fields, and players have hit points usually, and we'll say this player can move around, he's got some speed on him, and then now he's got to have his X and Y positions. And then in the public, we'll create a new, or our constructor, and this constructor we're going to pass in the name. And inside this constructor, we're going to initialize the name, and we're also going to initialize our HP to start at 100 and our speed to be at some default speed like 5.5. Okay, now I'm just going to create some other methods just so we can, because we're going to be going through this class, getting all the fields and spitting them out into the console, and then all the methods and spitting out their names and what parameters they take and what they return and stuff. So that's great. So I want to move, and it's going to move according to its speed. And this player takes some damage, so we're going to do an amount of damage that it takes and subtract that from total hit points. And now we're going to make one that returns the hit points. And that should be good. So that's our player class in our player module. So now going back to our main file, I'm going to quickly save this as something inside the folder and call this is tutorial 9. And starting out, we're going to set up our reflection filter. And we're going to set this to include our main file, which is tutorial 9. And now since we're doing multiple files, we don't need that asterisk. Just use the pipe character. And then after this pipe character, I'm going to specify which modules we also want to include in this reflection filter. And in this case, it's just the player module. So what you actually need to include here is the full path to the player module, just like if you were to import it. So in this case, I have it inside the test module folder, and then the module name is player. It's just like that. And I want to import that module. It's the same as test module.player. And of course, we need to import reflection. And I'm going to create our main function now. And the first thing we're going to do inside this main function is get the class info object for our player class in the same way we got the function info and global info objects in the last one. We're going to use a function that comes with the reflection module called getClass. So we're going to create a nice little variable, keep typing down, and then it's going to be of type class info, and we're going to get class. Now in order to get the class, if there's no conflict with our class name here, player, if none of the other modules have a class called player, we can just do player like this and it'll get it just fine. If there is a conflict, or if you just want to always be able to look at it and say, okay, it's inside this module, what you can do is you can include the full path to the module, and then at the end include the class that you want to include from that module. So either way it will work. You can do the full path of the class or just the class name if there's no conflict with any other classes. And in this case I'm just going to leave it like that. And now, so we can make sure that it worked, we're going to print off the class name to the console and run this. And there it is. Great. Right, so now that we have our class info object, let's start ripping all of its info out. So first thing we're going to do is get all of its fields, and we're going to print them out in a nice formatted way into the console. So I'm going to add a little space here from the class name and say these are our fields. And now to get to the fields, we will use the getFields method of the class info object, and what it returns is an array of field info objects, which is pretty sweet. So we get the fields, and then what the getFields method takes is a boolean that determines whether or not you're going to get all the fields recursively, which means it's going to go back through in case this class inherits other classes. It's going to keep going back through all of the classes it inherits and returns those fields as well. And since we don't really want to do that, and also this class isn't inheriting at all, we're just going to give it false, and so it won't even bother trying. And now that we have this array of our field info objects, we're going to loop through them with the for each in loop. And so we're going to create a local field info variable to take each field info object in the fields array. And then we're going to print that information to the console. So we'll print the field's name, and then we'll separate it and return the field's type. You can see the type and name of each field in our class. And so now we can just make sure this worked. We're going to build, and now you can see we have all of our classes, or all of our fields printed out. Name, HP, speed, X, and Y, and then their types. Name is a string, HP is an int, and the speed, X, Y are all floats. So it's pretty cool, right? Yeah. So, okay. So, you can probably guess, next thing we're going to do is print off the methods. And we're going to add a little space down again, whoops, and print off methods. And in the same fashion, we're going to get all the method info objects from our class using get methods, and this will also recursively check through if it's inheriting, which it's not, so we're going to give it false. And we're going to do another. Just say meth. That sounds good, right? I'm going to do another each in with all of our methods, and for this we're going to create a new function just to keep our code nice, and it's so something we can call later if we need to. We're going to create a function to actually print out all the information for this method. What we're going to print off is what it takes as parameters and what it returns, and also its name. And so we're going to start. We can create our output string, and it's going to start off with the name of the method, and this is m is our variable coming in. So method, whoops, I'm going to add it, m.name, and then separate, and we get the parameters. And now we're going to loop through all the parameters for this class info object and add them to the string. So we're going to create a new variable, which is a class info array, to get all of our parameter types from our method info object. So to do that, we use the parameter types method inside the method info object, and then we're going to loop through each of them with the for each in. We'll create a local param variable of class info, and each in params, and for each of those we're going to add the name of the parameters type and then a space to space them out. So that's just going to list them all separated by a space after this, after where it says parameters, and close the loop, and then finally we're going to move down a line in our output, and then we're going to add a little tab for extra formatting, and we're going to say what it returns. And to get the return type, we use the return type method, and then to get its name, just get the name property. And then we're going to finally print that output string. So that's our print method info function. And now it's just so I don't have to put all this up here inside our for loop and it looks ugly. This looks not ugly. Okay, so we're going to print method info and print off the method info for each method we get inside our methods array. And so you can see that this works. Print it off, and it didn't work. What did I do wrong? Okay, I didn't actually assign the methods. Oops. I wonder why that didn't throw it. I should have thrown an error. That's kind of odd. Anyway, so now that we got the set fixed, should print them off, and you'll see we have our methods move, damage, and get HP, and you'll see that these all return an int object. The get HP, we actually told it to return an int, and then with the others, monkey by default, if you don't specify the parameter type that it returns, the default is actually int. So, and I'll be going over all that in further detail in a few videos from now. And then you also see that the damage method takes one int as a parameter. Okay, and that's pretty much how you get all your info out of your class. You can do the same with constants. You can do get constants. You can do get functions if you have static functions. You also do get globals to get all that. And finally, for this video, I'm going to show you how to create a new instance of this object or this class. Now, there are actually two ways you can create an instance of this class info object. So the most simple way what you can do, and we'll just create a little test object with the object type. And what this object type is just the baseline bottom level type for any class that's created in Monkey. So even though you don't see it, when you make a class, it actually inherits automatically from this object type. And so this way, now that we have reflection, you can actually instantiate and use any class in your project as an instance of this object type. And so you're about to see that in action. If that didn't quite make sense, it's mostly my fault because I'm pretty terrible at these kind of explanations. But once I show it to you, you should be able to get it just fine. And so the easiest way to do it is just to use our class info object and use the new instance method. And that just creates a new instance of this class of the object type and stores it in test object. And this is if really the only time you'll use this is if you don't have a constructor. But in my case, I do have a constructor that I actually want to send a string to. So what I'll actually do is going to call the get constructor method for the class info object. And what the get constructor method takes is an array of this is just like the get function function. It takes an array of parameter types so you can get the right constructor. And in this case, we just have the one parameter, which is the string. So we're going to use that string class method from before. And that will get our constructor. Now, in order to get an object from this constructor, we're going to actually invoke it. So this calls this constructor for this class, and when you invoke, it will return an object of this class. So we're going to invoke it, and we're going to send it, just like the invoke for the functions, we're going to send it an array of arguments that match our array of parameters. So we're going to send a boxed string, box string. We're going to box a string up, and then this string is going to be some player name, and in our game we're going to use a nice little background. Okay, so once we've invoked, this will store a new object of this class player inside test object. And now we can perform all kinds of reflection functions against this test object. So the first thing we'll do, let's say we want to make sure we actually created an instance correctly. So we're going to print off the name of our little player here. So to do that, we're going to get the field name from the class and then get the value of this get the value of that field in this particular instance, test object. And then we're going to, of course, we'll have to unbox because that value we get back is a boxed string. So we're going to use our class info object. We're going to get field, and our field is going to be name, and then this get field takes another parameter, which is once again a recursive true or false, to determine whether you want to search for that name field in its parent classes. But in this case we don't want to, because we know it's right there in that first class or the top level. And then we're going to call get value. And now this get value, when you're using it with the class info, or when you're using it with fields, you need to specify an instance of this class. In this case our instance is test object, so we're going to put test object in there, because otherwise you're trying to get the value of nothing, right? It's because you have to have an instance of it to have that data stored somewhere. So now once we've done that, we're going to make sure we get all of our parentheses lined up. That's for the unboxed string, and that's for the print. And now, so this should, cross your fingers, I'm going to get rid of this stuff, so it's, because we don't need all that stuff anymore. And we should see background. Yes, we see background. Okay. So now that's how that works. And now finally I've shown you how to get a field value. Now let's invoke a couple of methods inside this class. The ones we're going to invoke are the damage. We're going to damage our player, and then we're going to get the HP back out and print that off. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to get our damage method. So I'm going to create a new local variable called damage method, and this is going to be of the method info object type. And we're going to get method, and just like with get field, we do this name of the method. In this case it's damage. And one thing you do need to note that with all these, with the get class, get field, get method, these are case sensitive, so you have to match the case of whatever you use here. So I use a capital D in damage, that's what you have to use there. I use a capital P with the player, so you have to use a capital P with your player here. So keep that in mind. And then a recursive to check all of our things we don't need to. So now that we've got our method, and whoops, actually messed something up here. I forgot to include the parameter types so we can get the correct method. And in this case, damage, it takes the one integer, right? So we're going to use the int class method from the reflection, and of course don't forget to do an array. Even though it's just one, you still need to specify it as an array, just like we did up here with the box string and the string class up here. And now once we've done that, we want to invoke this method, so we're going to call damage, damage method invoke, and we're going to send the instance of this object, so we're actually invoking a method on an actual object, and then we're going to send in our arguments in an array just like before, and we're going to send in a box int, and the amount we're going to damage, he took a damage of 15. Okay, so now once we've invoked our damage method, we're going to invoke the get HP method, so we know just how much HP we have left. So I'm going to call get HP method, and it's a method info, and just as before, we're going to get method get HP. Don't forget it's case sensitive, and this one doesn't take any parameters, so we just do the empty array literal, and false for the recursive. And now we're going to print off the value we get back from this. So to do so, we will need to unbox our int, because we already know that's what we're going to be getting back. Then we're going to call getHP method.invoke, and it doesn't take any parameters or arguments, so we're just going to send the empty array literal, and this will return an object, and then once we send that object to unboxInt, it's going to recognize it as the int object and convert it for us. So we just print that, and I'm actually going to say HP so you can see it better formatted, and let's run it. So we should see, oh, I messed something up here. I forgot to include the instance. So instance was test object, and now we build that, and you see our HP is now 85 because we took damage of 15. And there you go. That is how you deal with classes in Reflection. It's pretty cool, right? If you join me in the next video, I'm actually going to do another video on Reflection there. And in the next one, I'm actually going to show you some better examples of how you can deal with, or how you can use this Reflection to do things in actual runtime. So here I'm just kind of, so everything's at design time. So join me for that one. Thanks for watching, and if you have any questions, leave some comments or email me at jim@smalltimeoutlaws.com, and I'll see you in the next one.